Let's just walk through this trip in 2018. Why did you decide to go back after nearly 50 years?
That's a tough question, but for me to go back, I wanted to go to the locations where my 13 brothers died, and it was important to me to stand there one last time and connect with them and let them know that I've had a good life because of them, that they're not forgotten. As long as I live, they will never be forgotten. And so that was what was important to me, was to visit those locations where they were killed in battle and never had the opportunities that I had when I came back to the States, and, had several different careers and 5 children and 13 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren, and lived a full life. And these men never had that opportunity. So that was my purpose for going back.
Mm. I've heard veterans say that, those who lose their lives in war, they really lose two lives, the lives they had at the time and the lives that they might have had, had they survived. Describe your, you're in the air, you're flying from the States to, I imagine, a layover somewhere in Asia. Was it Japan or Korea, something like that?
Seoul, Korea, yes, was a layover.
Layover in Seoul, and then you arrive and you fly into Da Nang, if I remember right.
That's correct.
Put yourself in that plane from Seoul to Da Nang, and now you're on the descent. What kind of things are going into your mind as you're getting ready to touch down in Da Nang after nearly 50 years?
Well, we were actually really tired because that's a long flight,
Yeah.
from the United States to Vietnam.
Yeah.
But as we neared and Da Nang and the pilot announced that they're going to be landing, it was just an immense excitement that flowed through my body. There was some fear, actually, of what was I going to find when we went to those locations. Will the people be friendly, not be friendly when we go through the airport? So there was a lot of emotions that were flowing. And I think Mike Dankard had those same emotions, because we kind of just chit-chatted lightly about that as we moved through getting off the plane, going through customs. And then when I eventually walked outside into the immense heat, even though it was 11 o'clock at night, and the humidity, and just there were throngs of people everywhere, and I was looking for my driver, I was just, I don't know, it was just overcome. The experience was different, definitely, from when I arrived in Vietnam in 1969.
Sure. There must have been a flood of memories. You just referred to what veterans will often say. I asked them, what's the first memory you have of Vietnam? And almost always they'll refer either to the heat or to the smells.
Yes.
And you've got off the plane in 2018 and you feel that heat, you feel that intense humidity. The memories must have just come flooding back, I imagine.
They did. You're overcome with, like I did, go to Vietnam with my brother, and I wish he would have gone with me. He regrets it to this day. He didn't. Mm-hmm. But it's just so many memories that pulse through you, and it's just like flashes of video nonstop, and your adrenaline is already pumping, and the excitement is flowing through your body. And one thing I wanted to comment, I was expecting that smell. It wasn't the same smell as it was in 1969. It was completely different, which that was a lot better, because that smell was just god awful in 1969.
So you fly into Da Nang, you stay in Hoi An, is that right? And then
Hoi An.
Hoi An, yeah. And then you're spending a lot of your time in Quang Ngai, is that right?
Quang Ngai, correct.
So tell us about where you went in Quang Ngai.
Well, we went to the location of the first place we went to was Hill 411. That's in July of 1969. Our company, Alpha Company, 3rd the 1st, 11th Brigade, was tasked to build a fire base on that location, of course, with engineers and support. So the first thing we did was our company landed in Chinooks, and we had to clear the hill of booby traps, all sorts of, mines and grenades and rockets. The hill was booby trapped a lot. And once we cleared that, and we cleared it by getting online and walking across the hills, how we cleared it. And we had one minesweeper. And once it was cleared, then the first thing we did was be assigned our positions, and then started stringing concertina wire. And then the engineers started building out where they're going to put the bunkers, and we moved on from there. It took about 30 days to build a hill. So there was that's where Mike and I was actually first assigned together, because we were initially on different squads. So our friendship, our brotherhood really bonded those 30 days on the hill. And well, then it was after the 30 days is when the company left the hill and started patrolling the area. So that hill kind of defined our platoon, I think. I feel like it defined our platoon.
Hill 411. And now I haven't been south of Hoi An, so I don't know that area. But you're saying the area you went to where you saw significant combat, a lot of patrols, that area had not changed very much from 69?
Well, it really had changed. The hill itself is overgrown. Matter of fact, there was a crew digging up dirt at the base of it and moved it out to other locations. There's, the hill, when we moved to it, it was completely barren. I would assume they had sprayed Agent Orange there, and there was hardly any vegetation whatsoever. So it had trees. There was even some family cemeteries on top of the hill. So it had changed significantly. Once we got on top of the hill and you look around, the mountains to the west and some of the valleys, like the Horseshoe, they kind of look familiar. I mean, I can honestly say there was only one area that we went to that was just pristine. I mean, we walked out to it and went, my gosh, it hadn't changed. I mean, our memories, the photograph that we had in our brain was right in front of us. Wow. That was probably the only place. And that's where we did the bridge guard duty in my first couple of weeks with the platoon.
Wow. When I've been in Vietnam, up in Northern I Corps, I've seen vans from, I believe, an NGO, a non-governmental organization that was out looking for mines. They're still out, digging up mines and demining the countryside. Were you confident, or did your guides say anything to you about this, about the possibility of there still being any mines out in that area where you went to?
No, actually, our driver didn't speak English. So it was that was another story, I guess. But we were aware that there could be mines. So when we walked through the rice paddies and up some hills, I guess instinct took over, and I actually looked, at the ground for booby traps or anything I could detect that could be dangerous to us. But we felt fairly safe in that area because it is a farming community.
Okay.
And most of the stuff we went on was pretty well traveled. We didn't go out into the jungles, by itself. So we felt fairly safe.
Yeah. What sorts of things did you and Mike talk about when you were out there in the country?
Well, as we went to each location, there was probably 5, 10, 15 minutes of silence. I mean, we were both in our own thoughts. And then we kind of brought back our own memories of what we remember at each location and what happened. I mean, it's kind of hard. Here I am here talking about my time in Vietnam, but even with Mike, we never really talked to this day about the minute details of what we experienced. I don't, it's just, you just don't talk about it. And so when I wrote my book, when I turned 19, that was the first time. And I was, 65 years old, I guess, when I wrote that I really talked about my experiences. And of course, there are some things that are missing from the book that I didn't want to share. And so that's just, I think you could talk with anybody that's been in war and they probably have some of the same things. So yeah, there was silence at first, and then we would talk in general. Matter of fact, I didn't realize that my oldest son, when we did talk about, like at the August 15th location, he was recording those as we were talking about what we saw, what we remember. And so that kind of surprised me. And yeah, we talked about the guys and what we experienced on those specific locations in those days.
Yeah. You said that when you were flying in on your way into Da Nang, to the airport at Da Nang, you felt a little apprehension, wondering how the people there would receive you, how the Vietnamese would receive you. And, I mean, given your age, given that you're an American, it won't take them long to figure out that you're a veteran. So how did that go? How were your interactions with the Vietnamese? And I guess I'm thinking, of course, the folks in the hotel and the others who are taking care of you as part of their work, I think that's kind of a given. They're going to be nice. But
Right.
did you have any other interactions with folks who weren't in that category? Just how did that go for you?
I think overall it went really well. I mean, you're right. The people that worked at the hotel and the driver, they were all extremely nice. And but we did take when we came back in the evenings. My oldest son and Michael wanted to try different restaurants. I'm not adventurous when it comes to food, but we walked down the main street in front of the hotel, and people were very friendly and talked with us. And everybody was friendly. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. And there was one instance where, matter of fact, at the base of the hill at 411, Mike and I wanted to walk around to the front of the hill at ground level to look up at where our position was during 1969. And it was because there was a fence that was blocking it. We had to walk through somebody's crop field to get to it. And there was two ladies, a younger lady and an older lady, that were working the crops. So I approached them, and the younger lady immediately just started talking very fast. You can tell she was agitated. And so I tried to calm things down, and I asked her, can I take your picture? And she said, okay. And they allowed me to take the picture. And that's in my third memoir, Finding My Platoon Brothers, that specific picture. But then she went on still talking in an agitated way. Even the older woman looked at us and rolled her eyes, like in sympathy for us. And then I asked, could we cross the field? And, I did similar like that. And she said, no. And so we went back the way we came. And we actually went to the My Lai or My Lai, however you want to pronounce it, memorial. That was with Lieutenant Calley. He was in the same brigade I was in, but a year earlier, in 1968, it was the massacre village. So it wasn't a pleasant time because of that incident. And I was waiting to go in to look at one of the buildings they had set up to how the villagers lived, and just kind of do a comparison to my memory. And there was three Vietnamese, two women and a young man looking at the building. And as they walked off, I approached it, and one of the ladies turned around and came back. And then, she had tears in her eyes, and she said, what did I think of what happened in My Lai? And of course, that was one of my biggest fears, being there, because being my age, as you said earlier, and obviously American. And so that was pretty emotional. Trying to explain to somebody that, yeah, I agree with you. This was horrific, that it was murder and it should have never happened. And that's what I try to tell this young woman.
There's a place in your memoir where you say, it's pretty early on in the memoir, or the memoir When I Turned 19, you say what comes up in a lot of the memoirs, sort of referring to people like the two women at the bottom of the hill there. Although now we're back in 69, 70, these folks who just want to grow rice and live their lives, and they're just stuck in this war. You describe it in your, in the memoir. You guys come in by day and the VC come in by night, into the village, and these people are stuck there. As you're interacting with these Vietnamese locals. I mean, did that kind of stuff come back to you too? Just remembering, in this case, not combat so much as just the locals that you're bumping into as the war is going on.
Oh, it did. I mean, I can't say there was a lot of direct interaction with the Vietnamese population in my time in 1969.
Yeah.
There was some, which, you brought up, which was probably, I think middle of May. I've been with the platoon several weeks, 3 weeks maybe, and on a search and destroy mission. And this specific mission was to remove the villagers from a village and create a free fire zone because it was heavily populated with Viet Cong.
Yeah.
And at the time, if the villagers were forced to support the Viet Cong or if they did it because they wanted to, at the time, I really didn't care. I just knew that the Viet Cong were being taken care of and they were trying to kill me and my platoon members. And so, yes, we removed the villagers. We did burn the village. It made me reflect, even as I just had been only 19 about a month. And, here I am burning somebody's home and something that I never thought I would do. So that's, a memory that stays with you, and especially my interaction with the old woman in the hut that had no legs, that I carried her out to be with her family.
Yeah.
So they're heart-wrenching, but you got to look at, I'm there, at that point, I'm there to survive and help my brother survive. And that's where you're at that point in time.
You're referring to a passage in the memoir. If I'll ask you if you're willing to share that story about the woman in her hooch, but I think in that part of the memoir you kind of reflect on, the question what had become of me. Here I am. I'm a teenager in the world of war, and just one of the questions I come back to again and again is, what does war do to people? How does war change people? So could you share that story when you go into that village and you have this interaction with the old woman in her hooch, and you learn something as that story unfolds in front of your eyes, and then in your memoir you reflect on, what you don't dwell on it, but you just kind of briefly reflect on that question, like, what is war doing to us? What is war doing to me? But can you just share that story real quick?
Sure. That's the village that we were told to move all the occupants out and destroy the village. And it was one of the last huts I went into, and there was chaos going on. The villagers were screaming and crying, and soldiers were hollering and screaming, giving orders. And I go in this hooch, and there's an old woman cowering in the corner, and I'm guessing, 70 years old. Of course, when you're 19, everybody looks old.
Yeah.
And but I'm guessing she's about, 70 years old, and she's cowering in the corner and grayish hair. Her lips and teeth are black from betel nut. And so I'm yelling at her to get out of the hooch and move out with the rest of the residents. And she won't move. So I point my weapon at her and, turn on the meanest look, I guess, that I can turn on. And I'm yelling at her, and then she kind of just hobbles on 2 stubs. And I realized at that moment, I said, my God, to myself, I think I kind of wrote, what kind of person am I becoming, or something to that effect, losing your humanity. And so that's when I reached down and I picked her up and I carried her out to be with the other villagers. And when I was carrying her out, she was asking for certain items from her hooch, and I said, no way. And I took her out, and then I went back and got some of the items she was pointing at, and I don't recall those today, but I did get some of those items and I gave them to her. And then that's when I walked away. And in reflection, you kind of think about, okay, what am I going to become from all this? Because again, I've only been with the platoon for several weeks, 3 weeks maybe. And so it was kind of heart-wrenching when you're dealing with the civilian population. But again, at the end of the day, you become pretty immune to it all. You have to if you're going to survive and if your brothers are going to survive.